Welcome, everyone. I wanted to start this evening with a very short joke. It's actually not that good. Anyway, it's about three retirees and they're finishing up their 18th hole in their golf game. And the one retiree says, it's windy. And the second retiree says, no, it's Thursday. And the third retiree says, me too, let's go get a drink. So the joke is just sort of a play on perception. It's more accurately, this particular one's a play on misperception. But that's what I want to speak about tonight is perception. And the Buddha has so much to say about perception, so much, very vast and deep. And we're not actually going to go there this evening. It's beyond where many of us are even at in our spiritual path. But tonight I wanted to talk. There's a lot of very practical things that the Buddha says about us more fully understanding this role of perception in our experience, in our relationships, and in our conversations and in our interactions. So, to begin, it's quite amazing in the middle length discourses, the very first discourse. It's long and dense and deep. It's called The Root of All Things. And the Buddha really was a brilliant psychologist, absolutely brilliant psychologist. And in this sutta, he describes this phenomena of the human experience where our perceptions, he does it both ways. Our perceptions feed our thinking, and then in turn, our thinking feeds our views and opinions. And this is sort of the bottom up part of this operation that's going on constantly. And then the top down is the opposite, and it's a loop, and they're reinforcing and influencing and feeding one another constantly. So our views and opinions are affecting our cognition, our thinking, which is affecting how we're perceiving what's happening to us and what's going on around us. Really simple example. Someone says to you, where were you? And so if we're doing the bottom up, this is depending on how you perceive that is going to affect how you're thinking about what's happening, and then probably even your views and opinions. So if you hear that as a warm invitation, then you're going to start thinking of this person as interested and concerned and involved, and now you're maybe going to have an idea of this person as safe and reliable. And likewise, it could go the other way, right? You could have a view of this person as maybe you have a view of this person as not safe, threatening in some way. So your thinking is that you start to hear that as accusatory, and your thoughts in this situation become defensive. Same words. Where were you? And they sound quite neutral, but depending on our perception, it will make a huge difference in how that interaction proceeds, and our awareness that our perception is affecting the interaction. And this is the key. This is what the Buddha is offering us. Another simple example might be you have a coffee date, and you're waiting to you're going to meet someone for coffee and then they're late. Same thing. If you view this person as super organized and really reliable, then your thoughts are probably going to be very much giving them the benefit of the doubt, and your experience of that waiting time will be probably more easeful and pleasant than if you view this person as like overcommitted and disorganized. Then your thoughts are going to be running other scenarios of when you've been waiting for them, and then your experience, your perception of this waiting will be very different. It will probably be quite agitated and unpleasant. This perception to our conception to our views to our conceptions, and thoughts to our perceptions, just going around and around and around. And this is one of the most practical, immediately practical, accessible teachings of the Buddha about our perceptions. And then we have this amazing invitation and opportunity to understand that this is what's going on. And it leaves room for us understanding that these are my perceptions. This is not some objective, indisputable external reality. This is my perception of this external reality. And as soon as you take that on board, and this is what the Buddha is insisting, as soon as we take that on board, so much can open up. And so this is what the Buddha is proposing. So we're doing a series on similes, and tonight I'm going to jump off from read what I think is the most famous simile that the Buddha gives. And I actually knew this simile before I came in contact with the Buddha's teachings, or was even interested in the Buddha's teachings. It's a simile of the blind men and the elephant. How many people here have heard this about the blind men and the elephant? Yeah. And when you Google it, it doesn't, the Buddha doesn't 100% get credit for it. It's sort of like this folklore of ancient India, and the Buddha also. So who knows? Anyway, and this sutta, it comes from a collection of the Buddha's teachings that we're not always reading from. We're often reading from the long discourses, or the middle length discourses, or the connected discourses, or the numerical discourses. And this is from the 5th collection, and it's called the minor collection, even though a lot of the things in it are not minor at all. But it's sort of the hodgepodge, the miscellaneous, and so this sutta is from a book in the Khuddaka Nikaya, the minor discourses, called the Udana, which means the inspired utterances. And so the Buddha usually ends each of these teachings in this particular collection of sutta with some poetry, some inspired utterance. So the blind men and the elephant. And it's quite it's quite self-explanatory. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jada's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Now at that time, a number of ascetics and Brahmins, wanderers of other sects, were living around Savatthi. And this is really common in ancient India, and even in India today, that there are many people that are pursuing a spiritual life. They're stepping away from lay life and they're pursuing spiritual practice, and they're called sadhus in India. And you if you're in India, you'll often see them, and they're wearing different kinds of robes, and they're living the spiritual life. And it's the same at the time of the Buddha, which is even why the Buddha was inspired to do this. You know, he wasn't the Buddha when he left home and pursued spiritual practice. And it was 6 years before he experienced awakening himself. But he was living as a robed alms mendicant for that whole 6 years of practice. And then he started to have many followers once he started to teach. So these number of ascetics and Brahmins, they held various views, beliefs, and opinions, and propagated various views. And they were quarrelsome, disputatious, wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts, saying, the Dhamma is like this, the Dhamma is not like that. The Dhamma is not like this, the Dhamma is like that. Then a number of monks, these are the followers of the Buddha, entered Savatthi for alms round. Having returned after their meal, they approached the Buddha, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and told him what they had seen. And then the Buddha said, once upon a time, monks, oh no, sorry, he didn't say it then. Monks, wanderers of other sects, are blind and sightless. They do not know what's beneficial and harmful. They do not know what is the Dhamma and what is not the Dhamma. Thus, they are so quarrelsome and disputatious. And now he tells the story. Once upon a time, monks, there was a king in Savatthi who addressed a man and asked him to round up all the persons in the city who were blind from birth. When the man had done so, the king asked that man to show the blind men an elephant. To some of the blind men, he presented the head of the elephant, to some the ear, to others a tusk, a trunk, the body, a foot, the hindquarters, the tail, or the tuft at the end of the tail. And to each one he said, this is an elephant. This is a little bit of a setup. When he reported to the king what he had done, the king went to the blind men and asked them, tell me, blind men, what is an elephant like? So those who had been shown the head of the elephant replied, an elephant, your majesty, is just like a water jar. Those who had been shown the ear replied, an elephant is just like a winnowing basket. Those who'd been shown the tusk replied, an elephant is just like a plowshare. Those who'd been shown the trunk replied, an elephant is just like a plow pole. Those who'd been shown the body replied, an elephant is just like a storeroom. And each of the others likewise described the elephant in terms of the part that they had been shown. Then saying, an elephant's like this, an elephant's not like that. An elephant is not like this, an elephant is like that. They fought each other with their fists, and the king was delighted. That's the setup part. Even so, monks are the wanderers of other sects, blind and sightless, and thus they become quarrelsome, disputatious, and wrangling, wounding each other with verbal darts. Such is truth, such is not truth, such is. Then, understanding this matter, on that occasion, the Buddha expressed this heartfelt utterance. Some ascetics and Brahmins, it seems, cling to these things. Arguing, they quarrel, the folk who see just one part. So, do you know this story, the blind man and the elephant? Yeah, and it's just quite a graphic illustration of the problematic nature of perception, especially when we start to dig our heels in and insist on what it is that we are perceiving, that we are understanding as like, this is it, this is reality. And then it makes us, it blocks us from understanding and having an open mind and an open heart to other people's perceptions, other people's experiences, other people's perspective. And it becomes very problematic. And it's so easy to do. And this is the beautiful thing of the Buddha's teachings, ehipassiko, which means it's a Pali word and it means come and see, come and explore, come and investigate for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. And so the Buddha is asking us to come to a more measured, more complete, and more accurate understanding of this operation that's going on all the time. My perceptions influencing my way of seeing things and thinking about things, which influences my worldview, my ideas and my opinions, and vice versa. My views and my opinions are affecting how I'm thinking, which is definitely affecting how I'm perceiving this situation. And when you start to meditate and start to really just be the observer of your own thoughts arising and passing away, and start to decompress from some of our experiences, you start to realize, oh, that was my mood. Oh, that's just the way I saw it. Oh, that's why I felt the way I felt. It's quite immediate when we start to practice, and then there starts to be much more spaciousness and openness, and this allows for, a bit of a platitude, but you get to act instead of react. You have more choice in uh, and more awareness of the availability of your options and choices in your own life, in your own conversations, in your own relationships. The blind man and the elephant. No, an elephant is like this, and then they start fighting. It's we see it all the time in the world that we're living in now, as things get more and more polarized, and people's social media feeds are capitalizing on this loop that's going on, and now we're, the social dilemma, that documentary demonstrated it, that depending on what things I click on, then that their algorithms are running, and then more I'm going to get fed things that reinforce what I already tend to believe, and so things just get pulled further and further apart, and we're folk that are only knowing a part, and we're taking it as the whole, and then we're fighting with one another. So the Buddha does get very, very practical about working with our perceptions. And there's a beautiful sutta in the middle length discourses, and it's actually the exposition on non-conflict. It's sutta number 139. And the Buddha gives 6 strategies for reducing conflict internally and externally, and that this it can be a litmus test for, like, am I practicing in a good way? Hopefully there's becoming more peace. Hopefully there's becoming less conflict internally and externally. And at one time, we should just spend the whole talk on this sutta. It's very, very beautiful. And I'm just going to pick two of the strategies that he lays out in this sutta, and then look at a third strategy. And this first strategy is, it almost feels superficial, but it's important. The Buddha was probably the forerunner of political correctness. That's actually what this first strategy is about. It's about actual word choice, and that it matters. Our words do reflect our thinking and our views, and they're important. And this particular one is extremely practical to his followers, because they're all living a very itinerant life, walking around India, collecting food from lay people. And it's India. There are many, many dialects. So it's actually about dialects. And so this strategy, the Buddha says, one should not insist on local language, and one should not override normal usage. So it was said. And with reference to what was this said? So this is a teaching technique that the Buddha uses a lot, where he gives a teaching in brief. He'll go, there are these 6 things, and that's like this sutta. There are these 6 things that if you do it this way, it leads to more conflict. If you do it this way, it leads to less conflict. And then that's the teaching in brief. And then he'll elucidate each one and goes, this was said in reference to what was this said? And then he sort of explains it. So we're in the explaining part. So this is what he's saying. How, monks, does there come to be insistence on local language and overriding of normal usage? Here, monks, in different localities, they call the same thing a dish. And so it's the same item, but they've got this word for it, a dish. Some people call it a bowl, a vessel, a saucer, a pan, a pot, a mug, a basin. So whatever they call it in such and such a locality, one speaks accordingly, firmly adhering to the expression that one is used to and insisting only this is correct, anything else is wrong. This is how there comes to be insistence on local language and overriding normal usage. And how, bhikkhu, how monks, does there come to be non-insistence on local language and non-overriding on normal usage? Here, monks, in different localities, they call the same thing a dish, a bowl, a vessel, a saucer, a pan, a pot, a mug, a basin. So whatever they call it in such and such a locality, without adhering to one's own expression, one speaks accordingly, thinking, well, clearly these venerable ones, it seems, are speaking with reference to this item. And they go along with it. This is how there comes to be non-insistence on local language and non-overriding of normal usage. So it's just very simple, an acknowledgement that, different people do it different ways, and not insisting on your way. This is so huge in our human experience. And things could be so much smoother if we were more aware of the ways that we do this, and more flexible and more gracious. In its extreme, I've heard people talk like this in the extreme. They're like, well, it's just normal. No, it's your normal. It's different to say normal versus what I'm used to or what I grew up with, or, these are a world apart. But there's times when we've not examined our lives enough to realize, no, this is my normal. This is my culture. This is what my family traditions were. This is what I'm used to. It's not the way Christmas is. It's the way I'm used to Christmas being. This is very different. And I can just think of so many stories. One of the early retreats I went to was this lay couple, wonderful, wonderful teachers, Steve and Kamala Armstrong, and they were a couple, and they were deep practitioners, beautiful Dhamma teachers. And at one point, they got asked something about their relationship, and Steve says, "Early on, I realized, I can be right or I can be peaceful." And this is just, there's so much wisdom in this, so much wisdom in this. Ajahn Brahm tells a wonderful story of these very dynamic young couple, madly in love. They get married and they're just having knockdown, drag out fights about who's right. They're both bright and quite dynamic. And so Ajahn Brahm, they come to him. Ajahn Brahm, this is just so arbitrary, but really illustrates the like step back and have some wisdom. Ajahn Brahm said, "I have an idea. How about on the even days of the month, like the 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, the woman is right, period. And on the odd days of the month, no matter what the argument is, the man is right." And they're like, "Okay, we'll try that." And they did, and it worked swimmingly. And they stopped arguing. And this really illustrates how unimportant it is, who's right. And you'll see this sometimes with couples, no, it was on Thursday. Who cares? Like, you're just telling us what happened. It doesn't really matter, and then so I've made my point. And I mean, the Buddha is saying that don't insist on your dialect, your word choice. You'll even see this with people. No. Someone says boat and they meant ferry, and no, it was a ferry. It's like not important. And it's a wonderful freedom, and it's available right away when we start practicing, like right away, to just step back and understand the smallness of it, and to have a much wiser approach, and it's just conducive to non-conflict internally and externally. I can remember my parents, they never learned this. They never learned this. They were in their 80s. I got a phone call at work. My father's in his 80s. I get a phone call at work. They didn't know how to use computers. My dad's asking me to look up this thing on the internet and print it out. And I'm like, "Why, Dad?" "It's because he's having an argument with my mom and he wants to prove that he's right." It's like, "No, Dad, I'm not doing that." Yeah. Called me at work. They never learned it, and it was painful for them, So word choices and the way we speak is important. This second one, the second strategy in this sutta is also about the way that we speak and the words that we use, and that it is important. It has an effect, and it reflects the way we are thinking. So this strategy, one should know what it is to extol and what it is to disparage. And knowing both, one should neither extol nor disparage, but should teach only the Dhamma. So it was said. And with reference to what was this said? How, monks, does there come to be extolling and disparaging and failure to teach only the Dhamma? The Buddha always starts with the bad. He always starts with, like, don't do it this way. It won't go well. And then gives the good news, make sure you do it this way. This is much wiser, kinder, more compassionate. So he's starting with how do we get this wrong? And he goes on and he says, one who says, all who practice in this way, engage in this pursuit, and then he's describing pursuits that in other parts of his teachings he teaches to try not to do, and then ends that with, they're going the wrong way, they've entered the wrong way. So this is disparaging. And then the flip, when you talk about people that are doing this and that are being like that, they've entered the right way. This is the extolling. And the Buddha says the way that we avoid that is that we don't talk in terms of what people are doing. We just talk about this particular practice will lead to this result, and it won't be a good result. But it's about the practice. It's not about the person. And this is huge. We know this now with all of many of our approaches in the way that we use language. I was a speech language pathologist. And my first client was me. I was an SLP, and I worked with children that had developmental differences, and it was really important what language you used. And it did affect how you your impression and how you felt about children that you were working with. You no longer spoke of a child as just this diagnosis, whereas that was very common before. Be like, I don't want to say, this autistic boy. No, a boy that's living on the autism spectrum this is different. It's very different, and it's different how you end up. This is from the bottom up, how you end up seeing this person. and the Buddha was talking about this 2,500 years ago. Don't be careful how you speak of people. You can definitely speak about practices. You can definitely speak about phenomena, but be careful how you speak about people. And then this way of speaking where you're talking about a practice and then you're looking at where it's taking you, what the result is. This also is fundamental in the Buddha's teachings. Fundamental, this whole idea of looking at the results of things. This is the litmus test that the Buddha gives us all the time. There's one sutta where the Buddha talks about whatever you're doing, if it's chanting or if it's mantras or if it's ritual or if it's family tradition, whatever it is, if it's leading to more wholesome mind states, the Buddha says, keep doing it, good on you. So you want to be looking at where things are headed and what the results are, which leads to the third strategy. When we fully embrace this proposal of the Buddha, which it's not hard to embrace, that my experience is unique and it's my experience and these are my perceptions, which leaves room for everyone else to have their perceptions and their experience, and that it's equally valid. It might be different, but it's equally valid, and it's real. It's their real experience. When we embrace this, it is a game changer, and it's certainly a game changer in our communication and in our relationships, which is the third strategy that the Buddha gives. That it's in Also a sutta in the middle length discourses. It's sutta number 61, and it's one of the conversations that the Buddha has with his own son. And his own son in this conversation is very young. But the Buddha, at the beginning of the sutta, the first half of the sutta is about honesty and not lying. And then the second half of the sutta, the Buddha is really talking about what is talked about a lot nowadays in different circles as intention versus impact. But the Buddha was teaching this to Rahula, his son, 2,500 years ago. And he says to Rahula, what's the purpose of a mirror? Yeah, the purpose in Rahula's, the purpose of a mirror is for reflection. And the Buddha goes on to say, that's right, Rahula, and you should reflect. You should reflect before you do anything by your body, your speech, or even your thoughts. You should reflect on like the intention. Where is this coming from? And you should reflect on the impact that it's having. What are the results? And so before you do something, you want to try and anticipate, like, is this going to lead to a good outcome? Is this going to lead to, or is this going to lead to my affliction, the affliction of the other, or the affliction of both? And then actually during the whatever you're undertaking, it's tall order. It's hard to do, but it's certainly for big decisions and big conversations and big events. Very important to think about what's my motivation and what's the impact. And when we understand that these two are different, the intention could be very, very good and the impact could not be so good. And it doesn't mean that the intention wasn't good. And this is where we have so much difficulty at times in our interactions, that we don't tease these two apart and realize that they're different. And so then we can have conversations where someone's just insisting on that, oh, I didn't mean to, that's not what I meant. And this person's like, it kind of doesn't matter what you meant. This is how it felt. When we start to understand, oh, I can hear the impact that my words had. I can hear the impact that my choice had. And it doesn't negate my good intention, but it's very important information. It's very important data. I could be very much intending good. I mean, you get this as a parent a lot. I remember, doing things that I thought were helping my children, and then my children would give me feedback that actually, no, this is hurting me. Like, this makes me feel like you don't believe in me, or that you don't trust me, or you don't see me as capable. These kinds of messages. And so if the intention really is that I want to help, I'm gonna so listen to that feedback and start. A very good question when we want to help is to ask someone, what would be helpful? It's such an important question that we don't ask so often, because we get stuck, and so we're doing all these things that would be helpful for us. But so this impact versus intention, and the Buddha's teachings on this are extremely practical, and this mismatch happens so often, and sometimes it's completely opposite. A really common one can be around joking. Can happen very easily with joking. Someone is actually very lighthearted and heart full of love and having fun, and yet something gets said that it actually stings, and you want to have the skill that someone could say, oh, that hurt my feelings. And the responses that don't hear that are things like, oh, that's not what I meant. It doesn't matter what you meant. We're talking right now about how the impact was. And so if we can separate these out, we can have conversations that are so much more constructive and useful. And it's lovely. It goes both ways. When the impact gets heard and gets received, and an apology is made, not an apology like, oh, I'm sorry you felt that way. That's not an apology. It's not an apology at all. An apology acknowledges, oh, I'm sorry that my words hurt or landed that way. I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that that's how it was for you, and I hear it, and I'll be careful. I don't want to do that again. Then I could say, it's crazy. That's not what I was sort of aiming for the opposite. I was aiming for a connection, and it's sort of my backhanded way to build you up. But obviously that's not the way it happened. It's not how it felt for you. So, and then it's beautiful. The person who's had their feelings hurt needs to accept that this other person's, their intentions were not to hurt you. It's very important to then accept that. Okay, I hear you. Thank you for sharing that. I trust you, and I hear you. And this is what the Buddha is saying is possible for us when we step back and really understand more of the ways that our own perceptions, are involved in this loop and are so affecting the way that we are in the world. And it gives us quite quickly immediate access to more freedom and more open-heartedness, more flexibility, and more really like more self-understanding and self-compassion, which then of course spills out to others. Very, 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 very practical teachings of the Buddha. So I really wanted to share those tonight, jumping off the blind man and the elephant. No, it's like this. No, it's like that. Yeah. So it's great for us to see ways that we're doing that in our own lives. Yeah. It's all in there, and we have just a minute or two or 3 or 4. If anyone has questions or comments, anything.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when I check my perception and I treat people in a very like understanding way, like give them the benefit of the doubt with words, with action, I find that people seem to see people tend to try to victimize me. It's like they see me as a safe person, like I'm gonna understand whatever they're doing, and then they seem like, oh, I can like let out my anger on this person because they're a safe person to do that to. Like they're not gonna like fight me, and it's tiresome.
Mhm.
It's like that kind of like aura of like I'm gonna be understanding of whatever like actions or behaviors you have. It seems to invite inappropriate actions and behaviors out of other people, certain types of people. Yeah.
Yeah, this is that I would say, Serena, is not the middle way. It's a little off balanced, and that there's like unwise compassion. And the phrase that helps me move more to the middle is not good for you, not good for me. And for me, I can embrace that with tons of compassion. So it's not actually good for this other person to be just unaccountably railing and being angry and being negative. It's not good for them. So it's not good for me to just allow it, like just sit there and witness it. This is not.
It's not so much about like actually allowing or witnessing it, it's that it attracts that. Like it doesn't happen again, like then the boundary is set, like this is inappropriate behavior, but it's just odd that it attracts that in people that like they know it's not safe to do it with other people because they'll get railed at back. And then it's somehow like they can see that this person's not gonna do that. So this is the place where I can
The best thing that you can do for people is to try and help them take responsibility. That this is the best thing that you can do. So if you're listening to them tell you a terrible story where they, this happened, that happened, and this happened, that happened, the more that you can help them take some responsibility, that's one direction you can go. It's a gift. We don't help people see their agency enough. I don't know if that's useful.
Yeah, it is. I had an experience just this weekend with an individual who was off the regular chart. Yeah.
Mhm, mhm.
And yeah, it felt like that a lot, like really teaching, like, this is inappropriate.
Mhm.
And just like, nope, that's inappropriate. No, like,
Mhm.
or yeah, that's fine. That
Mhm.
this is appropriate. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. Yes, Catherine, and then there's something in the chat. Go ahead, Catherine.
Oh, I don't know, just thoughts about what she said. Checking in with perception to me is different than just letting any energy, thoughts, words come into you and seeing things with rose-colored glasses. Checking in with perception is seeing things with clarity, which comes through our practice. And that could mean directing someone to a counselor, directing someone somewhere else, having boundaries, saying, no, I can't be your dumping ground, but I can support you in this way. So to me, there's a little discrepancy maybe there.
Is there something in the chat?
Oh, just someone had to go.
Okay, but it just reminded me, because this lecture has reminded me of just how my relationship has changed with my middle sister. And, thinking about the analogy with, the blind man seeing different parts of this whole. And one of the things that I had to sort of get to with my sister is I was in my mind continually thinking that she was wrong and always trying to show her sort of another aspect or a different aspect of her life or her upbringing or whatever. And all that did, like you said, was create more conflict. But when two things happened, when I got to the place of like, well, I'm right and she's right. Like it's kind of like we're both right, seeing different parts of the whole.
Exactly.
And then also where the perception comes in or came in was we had the workshop here about the like how to speaking with abusive friends or family members, and the takeaway of shifting how I saw her and started changing my words, really like using really different wording, even though my feeling towards her was very much the same. But those shifts of words, that was really, really huge. And I'd forgotten about that until hearing tonight. And just, yeah, it just resonates. The importance of the words that we choose is so impactful. Yeah.
It really, really is. Yeah.
Yeah, great topic. I just had a week-long intensive on this topic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I listened to it before I went. Well, I knew it, but yeah, great topic.
Okay, we're gonna close with
Compassion.
great. Compassion, yay.
Okay, so if you can bring to mind someone you know who has great physical or mental suffering, and while being aware of their particular difficulties, direct these compassionate phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now send the phrases to yourself. May I be free of my pain and sorrow. May I find peace. Now bring to mind someone who's been very supportive of you and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. Now think of a neutral person, somebody you pass on the street or a clerk in the store, and send the phrases to them. May you be free of your pain and sorrow. May you find peace. And now bring to mind someone that you have a difficult relationship with and send the phrases to them. May you too be free of your pain and sorrow. May you too find peace. May all beings be free of pain and sorrow. May all beings find peace. Remember that all beings face great potential suffering, no matter how fortunate their immediate circumstances may be. This meditation does not eliminate suffering. What we are doing is being able to acknowledge suffering, to open to it and respond to it with a tenderness of heart, which allows us to join with all beings and realize we are never alone. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Please, Blair, Simon, Leith, Kelly. May all beings be well and happy.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Hi, everyone.
Bye, thank you.
Have any meetings Wednesday afternoon?
What's the?
Good night, everyone.
In Jasper.
Oh, right, you're in Jasper. Okay, I was just wondering when we can do a
Thank
more
you.
straight one.
Okay.
And if it's
Bye.
Oh.
See you next week.
Was it a success?
Oh, it's being served tomorrow at lunch.
Yeah.